Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TDWI webinar program. I'm Andrew Miller, and I'll be your moderator. For today's program, we're going to talk about cloud cost optimization, maximizing ROI across the entire data environment. And for our presentations today, we'll hear first from David Stoddard with TDWI. And after Dave speaks, we'll be joined by Shirish Bali and Derek Larson from Impetus for a fireside chat. Our sponsor today is also Impetus. Before I turn over the time to our speakers, please allow me to go over a few basics. Today's webinar will be about an hour long, and at the end of their presentations, our speakers will host a question and answer period. So if at any time during these presentations you'd like to submit a question, just use the Ask a Question area on your screen to type in your question. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, you can click on the Technical FAQs area and you'll receive technical assistance. And if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, please locate the resource window to download the PDF. Lastly, we are recording today's event and we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version so you can view the presentation again later if you choose, or if you wish to share with a colleague. Again, today we're going to be discussing cloud cost optimization, and our first speaker is David Stoddard. He's the Senior Director of Research for Business Intelligence at TDWI. As an analyst, writer, and researcher, Dave has provided thought leadership on key topics in BI, analytics, IT, and information management for over 2 decades. Previously, he headed up his own independent firm and served as Vice President and Research Director with Ventana Research. He was also the founding Chief Editor of Intelligent Enterprise and served as Editorial Director there for 9 years. With TDWI Research, Dave focuses on providing research-based insight and best practices for organizations implementing BI, analytics, performance management, and related technologies and methods. Welcome, Dave. And with that now, I'll hand it over to you.
Andrew, thanks very much. And welcome to everyone today. I know we've got an important topic that is certainly top of mind for a lot of organizations that we see in our research is how to optimize cloud costs. As everyone is, or a lot of companies are migrating significant systems to the cloud and want to manage costs more effectively and maximize ROI across their entire data environment. So let me give some TDWI research perspectives, and then we'll get into our discussion later. So, continued growth in cloud migrations, just to throw some statistics that we're seeing up there, that momentum is significant and continuing. It's a dominant trend, and when we do our research, we ask, what are some of your strategic initiatives that are most important? And cloud migration is still very much at the top. Organizations looking there for elasticity, speed, scalability, and certainly reducing costs are a high priority. Just in the cloud, I've got there just current use and plan for use. Data warehouse on premises shows 67% and 18% plan, but look at comparatively, 48% are now in the cloud and 38% plan. So this has been growing every time we do the research, and so we're approaching halfway here, and it's very interesting seeing data warehouse systems in the cloud. Same with data lakes. Data lakes on premises 30% planned for that, but data lakes in the cloud is 41% and 33% planned. And then unified systems, data lake houses, that we're seeing a lot of interest in that. So unified data warehouse, data lake into a cloud data lake house, 22% current and 46% planned. So I think the two things to draw from that is that there is growth in the cloud, but also that it's across entire environments. In other words, there's going to be on-premises systems and cloud-based systems. And so back to my points here, organizations are looking for agility to align resource consumption and allocation with more closely with business requirements. Traditional on-premises systems tend to force you to set a peak utilization parameters. And so you're spending money on idle and underused resources. And so organizations trying to link what their business use is more effectively with their spending. And then lengthy cycles, of course, on on-premises systems to put those together. So managing cost critical, we see it as, again, as I mentioned, is a top priority. So 43% here is saying they're shifting to the cloud to expand data access and integration to lower costs or at lower costs. And looking for cost-effective ways to generate value from all of their data, semi-structured, unstructured, structured data. 36% saying that they're seeing cloud issues, particularly around the areas of egress, extraction, migration, so as the data is moving from system to system. So the other big trend is the shift toward serverless computing and users-based pricing. And so here we're seeing pay-as-you-go elasticity taking over really as being very important as organizations are looking at how they can minimize the amount of work that they're having to do and to work with cloud providers. So enabling a easier scale up for new cloud workloads and data volumes and scale down when resources are not needed. And also seeing development of things like auto scaling, automatic scaling, so capabilities to be able to, in organizations, to set up rules, guidelines ahead of time, and then be able to automate that process so that the computation resources are responding automatically in a predetermined, say, for example, quarterly fashion. It's an opportunity to have better alignment between cloud data management and fluctuating business requirements with serverless capabilities as with more agility. And along with that is the move towards subscription models and usage-based pricing. Subscription models offering the fixed, periodic, typically per user recurring costs. Of course, the risk there is that you've subscribed and they're underutilized services. And so usage-based models are very important as a kind of a flavor of that, to peg pricing more to the actual resource consumption, better potential value for tighter alignment there with use of resources. So again, looking at some statistics we have here, so migration styles, and this I think shows the importance of having good visibility and understanding of what the usage is. 26% primarily are using a phased migration to the cloud, so moving in phases and making sure that each phase is working well, maybe using different businesses and different business functions, maybe a data warehouse into the cloud exclusively, and all the ETL and surrounding issues, migration issues around that. So 26% are using that strategy. 22% are using more of a lift and shift strategy, so taking on-premises systems as is and then moving them to the cloud. And then 17% we see here they plan to actually have a hybrid environment. So they're going to have to gain ROI from systems that are on-premises and in the cloud. And so all this really highlights the need for having good visibility into where you're going with the cloud and how each phase is working out. Of course, the problem is that a lot of organizations have really rather unplanned cloud expansion. They're moving to the cloud in kind of a piecemeal, unplanned growth fashion, one business unit after another. Maybe a data science project goes up to the cloud. And so it doesn't really have a good plan. So there's difficulty knowing, what is generating the most cost and who's responsible for it. So there's accountability issues. Management is always playing catch up. There's a lot of unanticipated peaks and valleys, making it very challenging to estimate future capacity and consumption requirements. It's difficult to understand the deviations from expected patterns. So you've set up maybe what you expected, and you've got queries running past the preset thresholds. And so a lot of, as I mentioned, the peaks and valleys, not understanding what the cost patterns are. And then the issue of temporary resources is a big one, where maybe groups will set up what they think are temporary resources that either continue or they forget to turn them off, neglect to turn them off, and so they become underutilized or things that are driving cost when not turned off. And so in the end, it's a lack of guardrails, lack of accountability, controls not in place, users that are able to guide users in how they could be more accountable for resource consumption, inadequate notification when there are, for example, queries that are about to time out, or there's too many unused tables or virtual data warehouses that haven't been used and are about to be purged. So that's a surprise to users, and so there's a lot of chaos that is occurring. So the key, as I mentioned, is to improve visibility. This is really critical and important to cost optimization. We see in our research lack of visibility and metrics is a common problem. 32% are saying that lack of visibility and proper metrics to manage cloud costs is actually one of their biggest challenges. It was one of their highest rated challenges. 31% say they're experiencing higher than expected costs. Multi-cloud, as I mentioned, and also hybrid multi-cloud with the on-premises and cloud, it makes it even more difficult because there's a problem of disparate monitoring tools, having to go from tool to tool to get the complete picture. So there's no sort of universal tool and visibility into it, and not enough granular visibility. So often you can't really see deeply enough into what the cost origins are, what's driving the increases. It's hard to match or understand the billing anomalies from one cloud provider to another. Chargeback relationships, so who's responsible for the costs, is difficult to determine. So information analytics also need to be actionable. So often we see with billing systems, it takes expertise to understand them. And so it's really not very actionable in terms of, okay, what do we do about this? And so that raises the demand for user-friendly visibility in dashboards, analytics to enable seeing cost drivers to gain predictive insights. And then, of course, understanding that the uninformed decisions have major repercussions. And so really kind of an observability issue. What decisions and how do they affect which business systems, what we're trying to do, for example, to improve our marketing, things that actually affect the business, and it's hard to see how they're connected. And so it's difficult to prepare for the future, and particularly expansion of things like AI and machine learning, which are, need a lot of data to fuel them. Okay, so with that, let me do a poll question to see where our audience is right now. So the question is, which of the following issues is currently your biggest cloud cost optimization challenge? And I know probably could be many of these, but pick the one that is actually your number one at the moment. So not enough visibility into cloud resource usage, especially across our multi-cloud environment. So not being able to see where the costs are coming from, what are the cost drivers. We cannot identify cost generators, including bottlenecks, fast enough to reduce costs and lessen business impact. So that the information that you're getting is too historical and you're not really able to take decisions in real time. Third, our chargeback practices are outmoded and cannot keep up with cloud and data growth and complexity. And we do see this, that those chargeback processes are not really updated to really the kind of agility, flexibility, elasticity characteristics of the cloud. So that's the third. Fourth, budget planning lacks accuracy, plans are not actionable, and we cannot accurately predict costs. And then fifth, we lack analytics and AI-driven automation to enable us to detect problems quickly, notify stakeholders, and take action. So let's see what the answers are. Just a second as more are replying here. And all right, so let's take a quick look. And okay, so I wanted to write these down so we can refer to them later. So we can see here 13.3% are saying there's not enough visibility. The highest percentage is lacking of analytics. So 40% saying this is the issue. 26.7% saying chargeback practices are outmoded. 13.3% the budget, and also, as I mentioned, 6.7% saying identifying cost drivers. Okay, that's interesting. So really, it's the lack of analytics and AI-driven automation that is the critical or problem most widely here. All right, just to sum up my presentation, some of the priorities, again, for solving challenges and optimizing costs, and we'll get into our discussion. Improving visibility. So that's number one. So you need continuous monitoring. So being able to look at systems continuously, and then automated notification. Actionable information is critical. So making sure the information is something that people can take action on, decision makers, and analytics based on complete and organized data. Automated recommendations to reduce delays and responding to issues. And then automation to standardize and scale cost management and chargebacks. All these flowing out of having better visibility. Set up guardrails, plans, guardrails, and guidelines. So knowing, communicating, improving collaboration around when resource consumption is out of line with cost optimization rules. Applying advanced analytics to make sure that you have the best insight and predictive insights. And then learning from experience to make sure you're having a way of continuous feedback loop to improve consumption and efficiency. And finally, organize to succeed. Make sure you're creating committees, governance committees to focus on cloud, specifically on cloud cost optimization, bringing the stakeholders together, executive decision makers, and then look at perhaps using FinOps as a methodology to improve cross-functional collaboration, because that is really the purpose of FinOps, is really improving that cross-functional collaboration, having good data, having good visibility, so it's data-driven spending decisions. And then, as we see in our research, the importance of it, applying analytics to learn how costs relate to business metrics. Okay, with that, Andrew, I'm going to hand it back to you to introduce our guests.
Terrific. Yeah, thank you very much, Dave. That was a great presentation. It's now my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers today. And our next speaker is Shirish Bali with Impetus. Shirish leads the DevOps and cost engineering practice and manages a multidisciplinary team at Impetus. He is passionate about delivering best technology solutions and his role to enhance delivery value by developing scalable, resilient, and secured systems. Sharish has more than 2 decades of experience in developing enterprise applications across all verticals and has made a significant contribution toward creating technology accelerators, streamlining processes, and continuously innovating to improve customer deliveries. Our next speaker is Derek Larson with Impetus. Derek is a recognized leader in digitizing the customer experience and capitalizing on disruption at the intersection of technology advancements and data science. Working directly with Fortune 500 and governmental entities, he is well-versed in the design and launch of product offerings that propel growth organically and capitalize on assets from inorganic acquisitions. He has over 15 years of experience enabling commercial companies to redefine their products and services and empowering governmental agencies to define and realize their mission promises. Welcome to both Sharish and Derek. And with that, Dave, I'll hand it back to you for the fireside chat.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Welcome, Sharish. Welcome, Derek. All right, well, let's get into
our
discussion.
David. Welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's excellent to have you here and to talk about some of the issues around cost optimization and how to improve it. So, Derek, let me start with you. What cloud cost optimization challenges do enterprise face? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, thanks, David. You touched a little bit upon them, so I'll try to add to it. But I really think it breaks down across 4 dimensions. One you hit on quite well. One is the lack of visibility into cloud spend, and this occurs when a company is unable to thoroughly track and evaluate their cloud computing resources. It's the unchecked proliferation of instances, services, or even cloud providers. But David, like you touched upon, all of this makes it difficult to understand your cost drivers, and it's leading to the ineffective chargeback practices, which probably why the poll question showed up the way that it did. I was actually somewhat surprised by that one, how much that was a leading factor in the cost challenges in your poll. Number 2, inaccurate budget forecasts. It leads to cost overruns. And all of that leads to those end of quarter, we've all been part of it, budget scrambles, and it distracts from core work, or worse, it brings cuts and delays to critical work that's going on. Number 3, the siloed management and transparency, which leads to conflicting strategies across different business units or the IT engineering side, reduced governance, minimal collaborations, and all of that at the end of the day results in decisions that are made on dollars and cents versus value and impact. Last but not least is the complex billing. We've all dealt with, technical jargon or invoices that are difficult to understand. And oftentimes you see changes to billing procedures, and that makes it very difficult to navigate the varying nature month to month, let alone diagnose the changes and correct those where cost is getting out of control. So David, to answer your question, those are the 4 areas that I see as the big drivers of challenges that enterprise face. And it's something that we've built into our solution to address as well.
Great. Well, I think we saw in our research a lot of the priority organizations place on getting to the cloud. So sort of a cloud first strategy, but I know you guys talk about the idea of cloud smart. So what does a cloud first to cloud smart strategy entail?
Yeah. And look, we're big cloud proponents. We like the cloud. We just want to make sure that we're getting there the right way. So when we think about cloud first, there's advantages to it, and it's a decision that folks have to think through. But the cloud first, it's bringing agility, scalability, certainly cost savings through rapid deployment while you're reducing those capital expenditures, moving from a legacy system into the cloud. But it also, at the end of the day, if you do that hastily, opens you up to increasing costs. You mentioned a lift and shift approach. I think your research showed that nearly a quarter of folks are still doing that. That minimizes your opportunity to fully modernize the legacy estate as it gets to the cloud. And that presents challenges once you get there. Certainly you're in the cloud and you may address the mandate that's been given to you. We like to think about it from a cloud smart perspective, and really that's emphasizing the optimization, the integration, and really looking at your existing infrastructure where you may have some investments already, or things may be better suited to sit there either for a security purpose or accessibility issues or just a management issue. but you're selectively migrating those workloads, modernizing, transforming them. So when they get to the cloud, they're optimized and the costs remain transparent and controllable. So when we talk about Cloud Smart, it's still getting to the cloud, but you're doing it in the right way. And that's why we call it Cloud Smart. And it's not an impetus term. I think it's pretty well understood across the industry. But those are the decisions, and you need to think about those and have the understanding of the impacts of those that you make, and the impacts that comes to cost, since we're talking about that today.
Yeah, well, those are great points. And I'm sure a lot of it does boil down to visibility. So Shirish, I wanted to bring you into our discussion now. So what's your perspective on how organizations can gain better and more granular visibility into their data usage in multi-cloud environments in particular, since we see a lot of that for faster identification of bottlenecks and cost generators?
Absolutely. I think as we are David, you started with this and Derek added some of these. I think we know that each of these data platforms or cloud environment, right, they're generating humongous data. And then it's important to have a mechanism to review this data, have a slice and dice, some filtering capabilities to generate meaningful insights. Otherwise, data in large set of data is of no use, right? And if you look at, if there are multiple accounts, if there are multi-cloud environments, you can imagine the complexity, right? It grows exponentially, right? Just to address this, I would recommend like a 3-step approach, right? Which we often use in our engagements. You start with an assess phase where you take a note of the current state, right? You understand lay of the land, you look at the cost components, you look at the usage patterns, you look at teams involved, right? Now, further to deep dive, it also involves looking at number of services, number of regions, number of instances, number of cloud resources, who all are using them, right? Can we attribute them? Can you attribute each of them to a different cost, right? And as we discussed right earlier, it's like the self-service provisioning mechanism from cloud providers. They help these resources scale much faster, and the complex billing models from these providers makes it really difficult to understand, right? And so once we have done the assessment, we have done with the current state analysis, we start with the second phase, which is to manage and look at the data, right? Here we start looking at some pre-canned dashboards, we do some contextual analysis and try and get insight onto the spend, right? Meaning we start looking at the current usage trends, monthly trends, or let's say top 5 costliest services or top 5 costliest regions or instances, how these costs are distributed, right? How many resources are getting added on a daily basis or on a monthly basis? Are we cleaning that up, right? Are there any alerts and notifications sent? This has to be done on a daily basis or a weekly basis so that, we try and manage the kind of data that we are analyzing, right? And the last and the third phase that I would suggest is more on optimization, which includes like adherence to the best practices, look at the actionable recommendation. I'm going to cover that in the demo later in the session today, but to summarize, right, to gain insights, we would need a centralized monitoring system to provide us with, current state, the trends, the optimization and excellence recommendation. Now, we can either use, cloud native tools or cost optimization solutions like us. And last but not the least, I think leveraging the cloud experts along, with all of this will accelerate the savings and bottleneck identification process. So that's what my take on your question is.
Well, I'm sure AI is starting to make a difference in terms of how people are able to analyze, use the visibility to have the data that they're getting into data usage. So how can AI be leveraged to things like detect anomalies, trigger necessary actions, and notify stakeholders?
Oh, absolutely. I think so AI has become like an inherent component of it. It's a very powerful tool, right? And we can use it for cost engineering, we can use it for forecasting, predicting, detecting anomalies, and triggering these actions, notifying. And not only in cost engineering context, we can use this, as we know, in cybersecurity, monitoring, operations, right? So effectively, the way we leverage this is, we collect data from various cloud services. We can continuously observe the patterns to forecast and identify an anomaly in the system. Now, what this means is, we have an underlying ML model or AI model that can have your upper and lower thresholds based on the daily spend which is happening. And as soon as it crosses or it detects an anomaly, you can raise an alert, right? You can use standard ML models, you can use advanced NLP-based models to detect these anomalies. And as you said, the data can be structured, semi-structured, unstructured, right? But all of this can be easily managed, and we can have this models which can help us detect these spikes. Now, moreover, the kind of models that you will use, they would automatically change these limits, right? You don't have to do anything manually. So even if your costs are increasing, it will help or it will adjust these limits and based on your spend patterns, right? Now, beyond this, you can use AI ML for forecasting your budgets. I think we all know we need to look at how much I'm spending and what will be my future costs. So that will help me plan budgets better, right? And you can integrate all of these events with your internal alerting systems. In case of a spike or budget exceeding a threshold, an alert can be sent to stakeholders through an SMS or an email or the internal Slack channels, right, or internal channels. That ensures that these stakeholders are informed on time and they can quickly take an action to avoid any cost leaks. David.
Thank you, Shirish. It's interesting. I think, how it's advancing there. So, one thing that's crucial, and we saw in our research too, is that, the chargeback issues and getting that's becoming kind of disassociated with the spend. And so why are chargebacks and showbacks also another term crucial for cost allocation and enhancing FinOps maturity within enterprises? We're seeing interest in FinOps there.
Yeah, I think that's another important area where they're really crucial for various reasons, right? I mean, if I have to think through, I can start from, let's say, accountability, right? We spoke about accountability earlier. Now, chargebacks assign the cost of cloud resources and services to a specific team or a specific department or a specific project. This promotes more of sense of ownership and accountability in cloud spending, right? So that's very important. And chargebacks also ensure that each department or team pays for what they are consuming. This leads to more efficient resource allocation. This leads to more cost saving, better optimization, right? It also helps save, manage their budgets, where there's a clear visibility, right? How much as a team that you're using, and can we look at how much in future that we are going to spend. Chargeback is also one of the important element of FinOps maturity. So if you think of maturing FinOps practices, you need to show back to the team that how much they're using and then eventually charge back to them. So show back and charge back is an important element of bringing in the maturity, FinOps maturity. Another thing, if I look at the chargeback implementation, right, it brings us more of granular visibility into, so let's say if I have a service which I'm using, I can look at which region that I'm using service in, what is the cost of operation of the service. So I can go granular, right? And I can look at different teams, I can compare teams, I can see what one team is using, and I can apply it on other teams as a stakeholder and improve on overall cost optimization. And lastly, I think it brings in a lot of transparency in the communication. So teams can discuss their spending, they can collaborate on strategies. If one team is using something good, they can apply the same to other teams. So overall, I feel chargebacks are really critical, component for this FinOps framework. They help organization optimize the cost, allocate resources efficiently, and align cloud spending with business priorities.
Those are good points, I think, and particularly the way organizations or different parts of the organization can learn from each other and collaborate more effectively. Well, Derek, let me bring you back in because we saw in our research and we've discussed how organizations have kind of diverse data estates. They've got hybrid, multi-cloud. So is it possible to maximize return on investment across the entire data estate?
Well, we certainly believe that is possible. That is our ethos in the way that we look at this. It's a lot of, you see a lot of tools out there and a lot of approaches that are looking at either one cloud or your entire cloud estate. But as we mentioned, it's not likely that it's 100% there. Certainly, there are some cases where that is the setup, but data resides in other places. The gravity is going to change. And you're seeing with Gen AI where people are keeping data because of this or that. And we're cognizant of that. So our approach is to absolutely look at ROI and make sure that you're covering your entire data estate, inclusive of all your cloud native services. That extends across things that are sitting on top of the big three platforms too. Like you have Databricks, Snowflake, and other providers that are out there. So where that data resides, you want to make sure that you're looking at it holistically, because if you look at just one part of it and solve for that, that may be good for that particular area of your estate, but you're not looking at the rest. So it's not really saving you the time, the effort. It's really not optimizing your data so that it's set up for your consumers. And at the end of the day, you want to focus on the value and the impact of your data, not simply the cost of storage or the cost of usage or things of that nature. So that's why we're so keen and so almost pressing to make that focus to be across the entire data estate. And we think if everyone takes that view, they're going to be more pleased with not only their cost profile for their data estate, but more importantly on how it's used, how it's utilized from a data perspective and those data consumers within their organization.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because you can get so focused on just trying to minimize cost, but forgetting the ROI that you're trying to achieve.
That's right.
And so that's a great point. Well, Sharif, what best practices would you recommend for cloud and data platform cost optimization and service utilization?
All right. I think so as we work with our customers, right, we have implemented many best practices, while we have worked with them. Let me talk about some of the important ones, right? So I think the first one that I can think of is the shift left mindset, right? Meaning you start looking at the cost as early as possible in the whole life cycle of software development, right? So its cost should not be an afterthought. One should look at the cost element proactively when you start, doing your migration projects or starting creating your data lakes or you start creating, cloud environments, right? You start thinking at that point itself. That's one. Second one is right sizing. So, we can optimize resources during as I said, during the development cycle, come up with right size. Now, it may take iterations, right, in Agile, as we say, and we can enable extended monitoring to begin with to get the right sizing, and later we can switch back to basic monitoring. You spoke about, David, serverless services, transient resources, reserved instances, right? You keep monitoring these instances for utilization. Many times we have seen that the utilization doesn't go beyond 70, 80%. And in such cases, we can always downgrade the instance type easily, right? We're looking for long-running resources, right? Considering saving plans like reserve instances that can help us save close to 40 to 50% of the cost directly, right? In case we're not sure on time taken by processes, you can enable auto scaling for some of these, which can help us save cost. Another important element which I can think of is, look for opportunities on automation. We can design automated flows, look at auto assessments, flows to spin up resources and, terminate them. Onboarding of an application on a data lake, right, or a use case. I've seen teams doing onboarding manually. So they'll start a resource, then they'll wait, and then they'll onboard an application, and then they'll run it, and then they will close it, right? All of this takes like maybe an hour's time. If you automate all of this, it becomes like within 30 minutes or so, you can do it, and it can help us not only deliver fast, it helps us saving the cost as well, right? Then for chargebacks, right, this tagging is another best practice. Every cloud provider recommends this, but in our experience, I've seen that many of the enterprises lack this. You're not able to identify stale resources if you're not tagging resources, right? You're not able to show back and charge back if the tagging is not correct. It gives you summary, right, of various groups and streams on where we are. We can set up alerts, monthly alerts, daily alerts. I think another best practice which should be done. I've seen people exceed their budget because simply like the alerts are not there. They're not using tools which will have those alerts, right? Moreover, I mean, if you look at the warehouse migration kind of projects, and as Derek said, it's more of the data estate, right? We look at the whole data, it becomes more complex, right? Enterprise are looking for single source of truth for their data at scale and with the speed for faster decision making, right? The migrations on cloud starts from ingestion from source data to cleansing and transformation and finally analytics on it. Now, again, in my experience, I've seen we should spend more time on understanding end-to-end use case, right? Whether it is batch or real time. You can choose wisely between your managed services and serverless services. Now, in managed service, we can set up rules to scale up, scale down based on consumption of resources, while in serverless, it is handled, as we know, by the provider itself. We can look at the pace of the data, right? If it's an incremental data is coming consistently, we can go for managed service. If it's a random, we can opt for serverless services, right? And again, while monitoring these data pipelines which are running, right, we have seen again that many times these pipelines would fail, and the resources will keep running. So if you are able to find out when the pipeline is failing, as you said, David, in the beginning, the observability kind of it, that would help us identify long-running resources. It would help us kill those resources. That also is a good practice, which will help us save a lot of cost. And lastly, I think it's more about storage and compute. So people do understand storage and compute, and these are separate things. And cloud providers have come up with scaling these separately, right? So you can optimize compute cost if you need scaling only, or if you need just storage, you can just scale that, right? And use accordingly. So I would recommend to have, consider storage and compute really separate. And that's what Snowflake and Databricks of the world are trying to do, right? So these are some of the best practices, David, that I can think of. There are many more, but these are some of the important ones which I believe that one can apply.
Well, those are all great. Yeah, I think you hit a lot of really good points. Well, I know that you guys are going to show a solution, but you recently launched, Impetus recently launched a cost optimization, cloud cost optimization solution. Derek, maybe you could provide a brief overview of it. What are the considerations one should take into account when looking out for the right cost optimization solution?
Yeah, for sure. And Shirish is going to provide a demo, so I'll do it quick like you asked for. Okay. I think the biggest thing when you're looking at this, it's an integrated view of utilization and spend across all your cloud services, your accounts, and again, across your broader data estate. It's bringing accuracy into your cost projections, predictable budget planning and forecasting. It's a common platform for cost visibility. I think this is an important thing too that often gets lost in the muck of cost optimization. This isn't just an engineering thing. It isn't just a finance thing. We want to provide that common platform so you're increasing that collaboration, because that's how this really matures your organization and allows you to fully optimize your cost. Shirish talked about tagging, that comprehensive cost allocation, efficient and transparency into your chargeback practices. And then we bring the automation, AI-powered anomaly detection with the notifications that are automated, and also the actionable recommendations that also builds into automation as well, because of the solution that we provide. And we're providing it as a service. We can provide advanced automation into operational best practices across security, monitoring, and things of that nature. As far as considerations one should take, first and foremost, anchor on that business value. And we talked about the the 40% savings that we can bring to you. So, I mean, right there, first and foremost, out the gate, we're bringing you savings and showing that. Two, do you need kind of a point in time view, or is a more continuous approach to address your spend what is needed? So assessing that from what is best for you and your needs today and going forward. Three, determine if you have the skill set and capacity to utilize and manage another tool in your environment. I think, David, earlier in your presentation, you were talking about the large amount of tools out there, and sometimes within an organization, the multiple tools that they're using to manage spend. So consolidating that into a packaged service is certainly what we feel is a business value and a decision anchor as well. And then last but not least, I'll say it again, do you get that holistic view across your entire data estate, not just focusing on the cloud? So I think if you think about those four things and really thoughtfully consider those, you'll come to the right decision.
Great. Well, I think you hit a lot of important points there, but you have a closing thoughts on what business value Impetus's cloud cost optimization solution can deliver for enterprises, and then I'll let you go to the demo.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't want to keep anyone waiting because it's a good one. First and foremost, we deliver savings, allowing you to redeploy those funds to other strategic initiatives. We bring transparency to your cloud costs, allowing you to enhance collaboration across your engineering and finance teams and base decisions on value and not just simply cutting costs. And third, we enhance your FinOps maturity. We're bringing allocations and forecasting, bringing that predictability to your operations. And because of that, it eliminates those disruptions to key things that you're working on. And often, the in-flight financial regions that cause us to either delay or disrupt what's going on brings a lot of confusion and ultimately disappointment. So with the FinOps maturity that we bring to the table, we're eliminating that. So I think those are the three things that you can anchor on. There's many more that Shirish will talk about, but I think those are the three that if you could walk away with remembering that Impetus can do that for you, that's what we're hopeful for.
Sounds good. Okay, well, before we get to the demo, we want to do one more poll question, I believe. Whoops, maybe just lost it for a second there. Andrew, let me hand it back to you maybe to bring in the demo. Maybe that'd be probably appropriate.
Terrific. Yeah, thank you very much, Dave, and thank you all. That was a great discussion. Shirish, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, you can go ahead and provide the demo for everyone, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll share my screen and let me know once my screen is visible.
And we'll get to the poll question after the demo.
Sure. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Okay. So here is what I wanted to take you through, some of the screens. I think whatever time permits today, we can go over it. So as you can see here, right, this is the executive summary of one of the assignments that we have been working on, right? And it gives you a view of a snapshot of what's happening in the system, right? So you can see that you spend around, 25K so far on this. Is the current monthly spend of around 2K. There's a potential saving opportunity of around $1,000. It shows the complexity of the system with around 36 services, 33 regions.
Sorry to interrupt, Shirish.
Yeah.
Just sorry to interrupt here. We can see your screen, but it doesn't look like we can see exactly what you're talking about here. We are still looking at, looks like the home screen. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you see these numbers on the top here, the executive summary tab that I'm referring here? Can you see these numbers on the top? I'm moving my cursor on the top. Visible?
Yeah, I think you might be on a different window. The window that we're looking at is a home screen with looks like a few different options, one of which was selected. So now I can see your mouse. There you go.
Okay. All right. You can see it now?
No, we're still on the same screen.
Okay. I think let me redo it again. I will.
Sure.
reshare it. I'll reshare it and see if that works. Okay. I'm stopping the sharing and I'll redo it. Let me know if it is visible now. Shared the entire screen.
Yes, now we can see it. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Okay. So let me restate this for benefit of audience. And thank you, Andrew, for pointing that out. So as you can see on the screen, right, we have multiple tabs here. I'll walk you through some of these tabs. This screen talks about the top level summary of what we are doing in the assignment, right? So you can see on the top, we have around 25K, 24.9 that we have spent on the assignment so far. The current monthly cost, the previous month cost, the potential saving opportunity, right, which is being proactively shown here for around $1,000. The complexity of the system in terms of 36 services, 23 regions, right, which are spawned in this system here. Right? So this page gives you the executive summary of where we are. Now let's look at the current monthly trends for this assignment. So we look at the current month. This is showing it for the last month right now. So we have spent around 2K here. Tagging has been done for around close to $900. 1.1K is not yet tagged. That's what it is showing, right? And then it gives you various charts, right from cost by service. So which are top 5 costliest services on this AWS account? Let's say Amazon Elastic Cloud is the most costliest service. And of course, the fourth one is load balancing. Similarly, cost by instance type. So which instances are costliest? So D2 large is attributed to the maximum cost in this assignment. Similarly, US East 1 region is the costliest region. And you can pick and choose, right? You have, so the important factor is you have multiple accounts, you have multiple regions, you have multiple, instance types. You can just put your filter here and you want to see only, let's say, US East region. You can choose filter this and it will filter for you, right? So it becomes like the slice and dice and filtering capabilities makes it real easy. You can take quick decisions here. Now, the important part I want to talk about is your daily cost trend, right? So if I look at this daily cost trend, it will show you how the daily cost has been changing over a period of, let's say, last 1 month. And it has an inbuilt ML model which gives you the upper and lower limit, as you can see here. As soon as you detect an anomaly, this will show up that there is an anomaly detected. You can set up alerts on those anomalies, and then it can inform the stakeholders that there is some spike that has come up, and you can take action immediately rather than waiting for long. That can help you save cost. Right? Very important feature here. Similarly, you can get into services, right? Each of the services. So there are multiple services here which has been, this team has been using, right? So you can look at how over a period of time we are using these services. What are the operations that these services are doing, and how much cost that we are spending on each of these services, right? And of course, which tags that we are using. All of this information is very useful because it gives you the allocation and to the cost. You can attribute the cost to different teams or different services here, right? And of course, the resources that you're adding. So let's say this month we have added, what this is showing is we have added around 3,500 resources this month. And, we have the cost of those resources around 1.9K. We have cleaned up those also. So many times we have seen where the cleanup doesn't happen. So you can always look at why the cleanup doesn't happen, which services we can clean up, which resources we can clean up, which are stale, right? So which can help us save the cost. So this is about the current month trends. Now, looking at the past trends, right? So again, if you look at these dashboards, I think a lot of this information is available at many places with native tools, but you won't get this intelligence, right? Which you bring in with these reports, which we have, right? So if you look at the trend of past 1 year for this assignment, we have seen that it started from maybe 4,700K roughly to around this 2K, and as you can see, we are able to forecast the cost for next 3 months. which is again very important feature, as you should know the future cost and you have the ability to manage the spend, right, as with the forecasting feature, right? And of course, there are service details which we can put in. This model doesn't have the ML model involved here, but you can actually predict how much this service is going to charge for me for next 3 months, right? Which are the costliest services here, right, from last 12 months, and where I have an opportunity to save the cost. So that past trends can help me get into that information. Now, beyond this, I think we spoke about actionable insights, right? So what kind of recommendations I can get from my data, beyond this anomaly detection or forecasting, which I'm doing. Here you see uh, there are around 1,300 recommendations that system is making. The solution is making proactively, intelligently to the user, and it says that we have a potential saving opportunity around $1,000 for this month, and these are different categories. As you can see this donut chart, maybe in CloudWatch you can have around 616, EC2 you have around 465, S3 you have some opportunities to save. Now what are these opportunities? They are all listed here, and they're bucketed into various tiles. These are different tiles where we are bucketed. If you see an example of, let's say there are snapshot being kept here for this assignment, and the recommendation is you can purge the all 8 weeks older snapshot, and that will help you save around $500, $500+. That's a recommendation which this solution is making proactively to you. Similarly, terminate some of these load balancers which are of no use. You can help save around $200 here for this month, right? So that's one level of recommendation. Then we can go deeper into it, right? This is all again proactive recommendation. On a storage side, I think many of you know that AWS has come up with GP3, must be coming with GP4 now. So GP2 versus GP3. If I move my GP2 storage to GP3, how much I'm going to save? So it says that you will eventually save around close to $90 for this month if you move some of your services from GP2 to GP3. Similarly, on a compute side, you have Graviton processor. So there's a potential saving opportunity if you move to Graviton processor, that will help you save around close to $4 for this month. In this case, right, I've seen in many cases it goes in $100, $200, $1,000 a month, which eventually help you save a good amount of money over a period of time. Lastly, I think we all know the reserved instances policies from cloud providers, and again, what happens is in a large enterprise, people would spawn resources. They will not try and use reserved instances. They will use on demand. What this screen will show you is that there are usages which are happening, which are on demand, and we have an opportunity to move from on demand to a saving plan, as you can see here, and that can help you save around $17 for this month, where teams are using on-demand resources where they could easily use the saving plan, which is already been acquired, right? And you can use those. So that's some of the actionable insights which the solution is giving, right? Moreover, I think we have some of the auto assessment kind of operational excellence practices where it gives you a compliance score of where do you stand in terms of best practices implementation. So as you can see here, the assessment score is around 34%, and it will give you what all things that you should be doing. There are various categories here, right? Maybe let's say you can see monitoring, you can see category as reliability, right? So Lambda DLQ check, AWS Lambda function is not VPC enabled. So it's a best practice. And right now it is showing that you're not compliant, and you can look at these, how much is compliance here, and then you can increase your compliance score with some of these best practices which are listed here, right? And security compliance. So security again is an important factor where we give an holistic view of your data estate, right? It's just not limiting to cloud, resources as such. Here we use some of the CIS benchmarks and talk about some of the best practices and rules which should be adhered to, right? And we should try and improve our security score, right? Right now it is 20%, and there are around 45 cases where it is not compliant. And The idea is to use this information and quickly apply those so that you make your system much more reliable and really optimized in terms of cost. So you're spending cost wherever it is needed. You're really not spending where it is not needed, right? I think that's what I wanted to cover on the demo. I know the time is short, but I wanted to give a view of how does this look like, and for the audiences, I hope this is interesting for them. There are more information needed. We can be reached and we can provide more information here. That's what I wanted to cover, David. Back to you.
Thanks very much, Shirish. That was a great demonstration for everyone. Once you're able to stop your screen share, I'll bring Dave back and he can tackle the upcoming poll question for the group. So Dave, over to you.
Let's have a quick poll question before we get into our Q&A. So what would be most helpful with your cloud cost optimization initiatives? So first answer would be a point-in-time cloud spend assessment to review and identify cost hotspots. Second, an automated assessment with recommendations to meaningfully reduce cloud spend. And the third answer, continuous support for analysis of cloud spend with recommendations for savings and optimization. So we'll get an audience feedback on this one, and then we'll entertain some questions from the audience. Okay, we got a few answers coming in here. It'll be interesting to see which one is the biggest answer. So, all right, let's take a quick look and see. And looks like most are saying that it's an automated assessment with recommendations to meaningfully reduce cloud spend is the top, although we have 20% each for point-in-time cloud spend and then continuous support. Okay, thank you very much. That's interesting. Andrew, back to you for audience questions.
All righty, fantastic. Yeah, we do have a couple questions from the audience members. I'm going to start off with Shirish here with the first question, but of course, Derek and or Dave, if you have something to add after he's done, please do so. So Shirish, how can we effectively implement FinOps practices in alignment with business priorities?
Okay. My mute, unmute. Okay. So absolutely, I think this, as Derek said in the, from cloud first to cloud smart, I think one of the dimension of being cloud smart is implementing FinOps. And then we all know that, DevOps, as we know, DevOps bridges the gap between engineering and operations teams. The, FinOps is an extension of DevOps, right? Which bridges the silos between different teams, maybe it be finance, engineering, technology, operations teams, right? It's a framework that enables organization to get maximum business value, having collaborations with various teams and, help them take data-driven decisions on cloud spend. Now, to implement FinOps, we can start with some of the practices like, again, what we have seen in our experience. The first and foremost is we need to educate all the stakeholders, about the initiative. Create that culture of, cost-conscious culture. I think that's very important. Everyone should understand that how important that cost is. We look at the current state, we look at the current challenges and the pain points, right? Typically, a cloud economics team is formed where there's a representation from each of these departments, right? We start with defining an accountability matrix where we know who is responsible for what, right? And again, it's very important even for finance team or even from other teams to understand some of these high-level cloud cost components, right? Whether it is application or platform or data platform, components like compute, storage, networking, data transfer, API calls. These are all important, right? If you don't understand them, it becomes difficult to control the cost, right? And then you set up guardrails, right? As we discussed earlier around them, depending on what are your business priorities, your objectives, right? Objectives like what will be my monthly spend, what's my allocation policy, right? You define all of that, and you have your tagging policy in place so that you're able to show back and charge back. You set up your forecasting alerts, your budgeting mechanism. Basically, what I'm trying to say is we start defining these KPIs, that can provide real-time visibility into spend, and FinOps practices will start maturing over a period of time. So these are some of the steps which I think, Andrew, that can help us implement the FinOps principles and policies.
Terrific. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next question here. Derek, this will be for you. Is it possible to ensure predictable budget planning with near accurate cost predictions?
Unequivocally, yes. And Shirish in his demo, if it wasn't clear, can provide that on a more detailed demo. But yes, the way that we've infused AI and ML to look at the data that's coming in, we can use that to put predictions in. And we're bringing that predictability in to budget forecasting. And again, minimizing those disruptions. That's the business value that comes from that. So the answer is yes. And we do that. And we do it so not just because we can infuse AI and ML, but more so for that business value. Like I said, minimizing those disruptions, allowing you to have confidence in what your spend is going to be, and curtail those end of quarter financial fire drills.
Okay, fantastic. Well, unfortunately, this does bring us to the end of our time today. So please allow me to thank our speakers. We did hear from David Stoddard with TDWI, Shirish Bale, and Derek Larson with Impetus. I would also like to thank Impetus once again for sponsoring today's webinar. And please remember, we did record today's webinar and we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version of the presentation. And if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, you can locate the resource window and download the PDF. Finally, I'd like to remind you that TDWI offers a wealth of information, including the latest research, reports, and webinars about BI, data warehousing, and a host of related topics. So I encourage you to tap into that expertise at tdwi.org. And from all of us here, let me say thank you so much for attending. This does conclude today's event.